Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio and the Spirit Society of Virginia here in our very online Friday inspirational talk. We're no longer presential in the center. We're figuring out the ways, but Sundays we're there presentially for those who are local in our Northern Virginia area. Those who are near DC, welcome, join us. And now we're going to begin with a theme, as on Fridays we're studying passages of the Gospel according to Spiritism. Many people think that this book is only about messages that we read at random to inspire us, but it's much more than that. It's a book to study. Today we're going to talk about a passage that people barely notice in this book, the alliance of science and religion. It's very curious. The theme is very interesting, but to begin, because this is a very therapeutic session, let us begin with a message, followed by a prayer, to get us into the therapeutics of receiving the treatment that we need, to absorb the message that we need, to really leap into the direction of our evolution. So we're going to ask Paloma to help us with the reading of a message. Paloma, please.
Hello, dear friends. We are reading a message from the book Living Spring, psychographed by Chico Xavier by the Spirit of Manual. And it's chapter 165, Do Not Doubt. And he quotes James, "He who doubts is like a wave on the sea, blown and tossed about by the wind." In your acts of faith and hope, do not let doubt interpose itself like a shadow between your needs and the power of the Lord. In your endeavors, the coagulating power of your thoughts proceeds from yourself, from deep within your soul, because only those who have faith can persevere in climbing the steps that will take them to heights they hope to reach. On the outer plane, doubt may help with experimentation in this or that area of material progress. Hesitation in our inner world, on the other hand, undoes our finest energies. Those who doubt themselves disturb the divine help within them. No one can help those who do not help themselves. Understanding the imperative of trust that should guide our course ahead, let us insist on the good and seek it with all the strength we have. Let us abandon hurry and turn our backs on discouragement. It does not matter if our conquest is triumphant today or tomorrow. What matters is working and doing the best we can here and now, because life will bring us what we seek. Pressing forward without hesitation, loving, learning, and helping tirelessly, that is the formula for walking successfully to our victory. And on this tireless journey, let us not forget that doubt will always be like the code of defeatism, leading us towards denial and death.
We're now welcoming everyone to our prayer when we raise our thoughts. Gratitude to you, God, for bringing us together to another learning opportunity, cherishing our very nature, our spirituality. After a week of work, we have learned so much this week, dear Lord, about ourselves and immortality. May this moment be deeply therapeutic, boosting in us our deep awareness of our nature. One day, we'll no longer be here in this very body with this very personality. We'll go back to the spiritual realm. For now, we'll like to leave footprints of light, of understanding, of goodwill, of joy, of forgiveness. May we help more today than we did yesterday. May we create less challenges and difficulties for others than we've been creating over the centuries and millennia. And may we create bridges of friendship amongst people, as we are all responsible for the relationships you've given us. May we connect the hearts that are connected to us amongst themselves. As Jesus invited us and encouraged us to cultivate friendships, may we get out of our tormenting lives, our neurosis, and seek the light, illuminating ourselves in constructions of renunciation, in constructions of love and understanding. May the lesson today be deeply empowering in our divine essence. And may those who are in great need of love feel the blessings of this moment, enveloping all of us where we are in our homes, work, driving, walking. As we feel the shower of your healing protection, we thank you for the permission of one more Friday inspirational study together, and so be it. All right. The topic we're going to begin today is in the Gospel according to Spiritism. It is titled The Alliance between Spiritism, actually science and religion. And Spiritism brings to us in the Gospel according to Spiritism this very understanding. At the very beginning of that chapter, we're going to find Kardec quoting Jesus when he said, "I have not come to destroy the law." And Kardec brings to us the three revelations from Moses to Christ in Spiritism. But before we enter this topic, we'd like to ask ourselves, how many of us, when we get into a new place, we have this egotistic feeling that we have come to make things better than people did when they came before us? What is this? Ego, right? It's ego. When we enter a new organization or a new community and we have no respect for its history, and we come deeply forgetful that that organization, that community had a pathway. And thanks to whatever they've done, they open the doors for us. The same for a nation. When we are immigrants, when we migrate to another country, we're so egotistic that we come and do not appreciate the history of that country. We come with our very idiosyncrasies and we start thinking egotistically. What I know is best. These people don't know anything. But Jesus, unlike any of us, he said, I have not come to destroy the law. He had zero ego because he was completely aligned with God. He is not destructive. He doesn't look at people from the top to bottom. He is literally humble and he says, I came to fulfill the law, not to destroy. How many of us look at our ancestors in our very family and we look down on them, forgetting that we may be the very reincarnation of them? Like Publius Lentulus in the book 2000 years ago, he is the very reincarnation of his grandfather. What if he didn't know and he looked down on his grandfather, who was a very cruel man? He didn't. He came actually to redress many things that he had created. So, in this very chapter, we're going to have an opportunity to find our pattern. You and I, are we here to fulfill the law or to destroy it? In the sense, are we appreciating the history of our very families? Are we appreciating the history of our very countries, the ones that we were born in and the ones that we came to live in? Are we appreciating the communities where we're living in? Do we know the history? For example, a Spiritist Center. Do you know the history of your Spiritist Center? Do you appreciate the hard work of the people who came before you and the pathway? Or do you look down on them like, if it were me, I would do much better? As if we were, because we were not there. So we wouldn't do much better because we're not even invited to be there. So we wouldn't do much better. We're not even there. We could look at Moses and say, oh, silly Moses, you were so impulsive. Oh, Jesus, come on, you're so meek. Oh, Kardec, come on. I could bring it much further. See how proud of ourselves we are, egotistic, judging, criticizing, whereas we were not even invited to be in their very shoes. And they have done great job. The reason why we know it is because we're here thanks to them. So we may be puzzled when we talk about who should we appreciate? What should we appreciate? The truth brought by material science or the truth brought by religion? Kardec pacifies it all when he says that science and religion are two levers of human intelligence. Science reveals the law of material world and religion the laws of moral world. That's it. No longer one is replacing the other or contradictory. At Kardec's time, science and religion were truly divorced. They couldn't speak with each other. We can see it well portrayed in Kardec's movie. Kardec, the movie, you can watch on Netflix or other platforms, talks about how scientists were really pushing away religion and how religion was really not talking to science at all. Kardec was brave enough to not only realize, but to bring to all of us this reasoned understanding. Well, science is needed because it teaches us about the laws of the material world, and religion is needed because it talks about the laws of the moral world. And he goes even further with good reasoning. He says, but neither science nor religion, having the same principle, which is God, can contradict each other. If they were to negate each other, one would necessarily be wrong and the other right, because God could not possibly be willing to destroy his own work. So who created science and religion? Well, the laws of material world were created by God, and the laws of the moral world as well. So we name it science and religion, but at the end of the day, it's all jurisdiction of God. In the Spirit's book by Kardec, we learn that God created the elements, first chapter of the first part of the Spirit's book. The elements of the universe, matter and spirit, material realm, spiritual realm, everything created by God. Science studies one, and religion studies the other. They are complementary, they are not mutually exclusive. And Kardec goes further, bringing in the Christ. The time has come in which Christ's teachings must receive their completion, in which the veil cast intentionally over some parts of these teachings must be lifted. Jesus said he couldn't say it all, he couldn't explain it all. We wouldn't understand. True, we didn't have enough vocabulary. We needed modern languages. We needed the press. We needed a lot of growth and progress for us to understand what we came to understand in the 19th century through the Spiritist science. That's why we call it revelations, because you lift the veil and then we come to know. Think about it. How many things do we know today that we didn't know lives past? And think about it. In 10 years or 100 years, how many things do you think you're going to come to know that you don't know today? Every day, Mentor Joseph says, Vanessa, think, contemplate, he says, things that you don't know today that you may know in 100 years. And I say, well, if I knew, I would know. So I don't know. He said, well, push yourself. So you're going to progress faster. And then I keep like, really squeezing my forehead, thinking hard. And I say, let me guess, hypothesis, because scientists hypothesize. So that's what he's trying to push. Hypothesize. So I was hypothesizing the other day. I am guessing that in 100 years, we are going to create, and then I say something. And then you may say, Vanessa, say something. I don't know. That's a topic for another day. But things we can hypothesize that in all business meetings, in less than 100 years, I think, people are going to pray to God before they start a business meeting. That's a possibility. that we are going to consult the higher spirits in our businesses before we plan on spending things, like creating budgets for things, like we do nowadays. Many universities, companies, they have a budget, they get grants, and then when the grant is expiring, you still have that money allocated for it, and they say, we have to spend this money just because we have to use it, and then we spend money on things that we don't need. And then in probably less than 100 years, we're going to stop this nonsense, spending money just because, and be a little more either frugal or allocate the money in wiser ways than just spending just because we have to allocate the money and we have to do it. So you see, what I am thinking is not really wild, but can you imagine the progress in laws, for example? Laws that will be created to regulate the metaverse. Well, we need regulations. It's not a far stretch when we think that in the upcoming decades, we need to regulate better the way our preschools, the preschool teachers are prepared. There will be a day on earth that certainly we can hypothesize that preschools and K-12 teachers will be better prepared than even higher education teachers, which is the reverse nowadays, right? We don't demand so much from pre-K and K-12 teachers as we demand in terms of formation of higher education teachers. So it's very likely that we will shift these things in the upcoming years. And we can also foresee that emotional education is going to be a big part of the curriculum for pre-K, K-12 schools. We're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. So, and you can foresee, think about it. That's a good exercise, right? Talking about perspective, when we go back to the Gospel according to Spiritism, Kardec explains to us that one day science will stop to be exclusive materialistic and will take into account the spiritual element. We're getting there. We have some scientists who even come at Kardec Radio on Saturdays at 11 a.m. to tell us about their broader perspective, incorporating broader topics into their research beyond the material element. And religion will stop misinterpreting the material, organic, immutable laws of matter. How many religious sects disregard the scientific evidence of climate change, global warming? This, and forgive me for saying stupidity, will stop. Spiritism vouches for it and says, yes, climate change exists. It's a fact. Global warming is a fact. And we need to team up with the world to reverse it. These two forces, says Kardec, will support each other and advance together, lending each other mutual support. Spiritism is already the common ground where science and religion talk peacefully with so much ease that no longer there is conflict inside of us. I hear people who say, my husband, my wife, they are so rational. They don't understand what we talk about in Spiritism. X that out, because when we're really rational, we talk about these things. It's actually laziness when people don't want to talk about these things because it's easier, it's comfortable to simply not think about life continuum. It's a form of laziness and inertia when we say, I don't know what happens next, and I prefer not to know because it's easier not to think. Because if we really read and talk about it, we'll see it's so rational that when we are really rational, we talk about these things. And that's why in Spiritism, we understand that religion and reasoning, they can go along so well. Kardec says, religion, no longer having to endure the discredit of science, will acquire unshakable power because it will be in accord with reason and will no longer be able to oppose the irresistible logic of the facts. In the book Evolution into Worlds, we're going to see how this unity of science and religion can be so beautiful, and it makes so much sense that in this book alone, we have enough scientific evidence for many scientific protocols. I myself, as a scientist, am the living proof that this can inspire us to a lot of scientific protocols that can create a lot of projects and thus progress in science. And I say this because as a scientist, I was able to create a protocol, specifically one, not only one, but one, in which we could see from the hypothesis brought based on Spiritism into the lab, originating many papers and grants based on the hypothesis that we could branch out from this very book, Evolution into Worlds. And that's why Kardec is going to show to us that this union between science and religion is so beneficial to us that it can expedite the progress of humankind on earth. He says the mark of union resides in the knowledge of the laws that govern the spirit world and its relations with the corporeal one. And the consequences of this revolution are easy to foresee. For social relations, it must bring inevitable changes that no person has the power to oppose because they are in the designs of God and result of the law of progress, which is a law of God. So Kardec shows to us that it's so important, this union between science and religion is so healthy, beneficial, and possible that if we invest time on this like we do at Kardec Radio at 11 a.m., in all of the talks, all of the programs at Kardec Radio, we can easily see the bridge between reason and faith that we can expedite our social life and the progress of humankind on earth, bringing to us the new era. Last time we were together, Leo Vieira brought to us a beautiful understanding of what this new era on earth is going to be all about. And it's described in the very next subtitle in this chapter 1 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, the new era. To give examples of us, we bring to you, for example, the scientist Harry Canning. He is a physician and a nurse by formation. His background, he's also a faculty at Duke University. He created the Center for Spirituality, Theology, and Health. He has thousands of papers published and books talking about the very coexistence of medicine, religion, and health. And he subtitled this book, Where Science and Spirituality Meet. showing to us how important it is for science to accommodate religion and spirituality, and how important it is in the rapport with patients to bring into the very dialogue with the physician, with the healthcare providers, the very background, the religious background. Why? Because you and I, when we are dealing with illnesses, it's all about our belief. You may take medicine or comply with the doctor's prescription also based on your religious belief. Our religious and spiritual background can boost our recovery, can boost our health, either to prevent or remedy a situation. We can no longer rule these factors out of the picture when we're talking about our deep recovery health wise. So he has been a wonderful partner in this pathway of bringing spirituality into health. Another thing that we can bring to us to show how science and religion can be really partners, Dr. Fred Gage from the University of California in San Diego, in 2002, he was the first scientist ever to show, as you can see in this very picture, this is him on the left, and in the center, these are neurons and their connections, the synapses. The green parts of it, these are fluorescent markers showing parts of the neurons, and the bluish one, the very nuclei showing to us their connections and new neurons being born in aging brains. That was the first time that somebody showed it ever on Earth in 2002. But in the book Evolution in Two Worlds by Andre Lewis, he showed to us in 1958, way before neuroscience could ever even dream about it. He said in chapter 9 of part 1, neurons are born and reborn millions of times in the physical and extra-physical plane. So friends, if we read these books, we go back to the lab, we can expedite science because these are revelations. Revelations brought to us. For example, in the book Paul and Stephen, we have Emmanuel describing the streets of the city, the Greek city, Corinth, being made of marble. Back when the book was written in at the end of 1930s, beginning of the 40s, no historians could confirm those facts, and many spiritists doubted the mediumship of Chico Xavier. And much later, those historians got to know that Emmanuel was right. Well, one more. If all these books that we study in Spiritism tell us about the power of prayer, how it can change our very physiology, how prayer is so tangible that it can change our very, very, very genes, even the activation or deactivation of genes, then comes our dear friend Andrew Newberg, who is a neuroscientist in the beginning of the 21st century, talking about his studies imaging of the brain, scanning the brain, changing, and how prayer changes our very brain. And he wrote a book about it, How God Changes Your Brain, breakthrough findings from a leading neuroscientist. 2 decades later, Dr. Newberg gave an interview last year at Cardiac Radio with a new book when he talks about the spiritual brain and says how prayer, meditation, etc., can change our very physiology. Dr. Herbert Benson did the same. For 30 years studying relaxation breathing, he came to the realization that prayer, yoga, meditation, walking meditation can change the activation of our genes and propel us into greater health as well. So, we now bring another evidence that reading books can change our neural pathways as well, showing that one study by a group led by Gregory Burns in Canada actually showed in the journal Brain Connectivity volunteer studies who read a novel named Pompeii for 9 consecutive years and later had their brains scanned for MRI revealed an increased connectivity in certain areas of the brain, like the left temporal cortex, which is a part associated with language. This is one of the main changes. And as he said, stories change our lives and in some cases may help define a person. So here we have an extrapolation. When Emmanuel, through Chico Xavier, wrote these books, which are similar to this Pompeii, it's a novel of the same level in terms of, the intricacies of the characters, the dramas. 2,000 years ago, 50 years later, Hail Christ, Renunciation, Paul, and Stephen. Why are the superior spirits like Emmanuel bringing these novels? For our delight, simply? No. When we're reading those books, observing the characters who fail, who are evil, and the characters who are doing the good, sacrificing, compassionate, forgiving, we are learning how to see ourselves and how we can get out of these old conditionings and get ourselves into these new pathways, changing our very physiology. And as Dr. Burns says, maybe even redefining ourselves. So if you have read these books, read it again and again and again and study it. Make book clubs in your cities, in your communities, online or in person, studying the characters and seeing ourselves. It's not enough to know, we need to feel it. Are we like those characters? But what are the potential for us to see the other side? For example, in the book 50 Years Later, we see Claudia Sabina. In her young years, she fell in love with a man named Helvidio Lucius. He's a big name in the Roman Empire back then. He has high positions. And he confesses in certain parts of the book that he actually played games with her and he regrets it. But who knew that even after he got married, had children, and she got married with somebody else, he would create a whole plot, create a big tragedy for so many families out of her own lack of self-interest, selfishly, hurt pride, wounded pride. She created big drama. But is she really the only person who is leading people into that plot? She is actually the victim of the very man who put her in disillusion. In another book named Sex and Destiny, Brother Felix is going to tell us that when a person cultivates the heart of somebody else without fulfilling their promises, whether they think it's a promise or not, they are the very words of Brother Felix. It's as if you're creating a bomb in that very person's heart. And that bomb is going to explode and create a domino effect of explosions in many people's lives. And the very person who did so is co-responsible for all those tragedies. That's why it's important to read these books time and again to see where we are. Because after all, you and I today are being called to a new era inside of our hearts. What we know with science and religion, is there peace inside of us? Or are we, like many people, still splitted, conflicted? Who should I believe? What should I believe? Our reasoning is the very tool through which we can create peace inside of us, and through that peace, create a new era inside of us. If in the past we put this person against that person in this life, we have to be the bridge between this heart and this heart. It's a reincarnatory theme. If we fail again, we may not even reincarnate on earth. We never know, friends. But we are being invited today to a very how do I say this? Realization. Where are we? Are we really doing the good? Or are we doing half good, which is evil in itself? If we're not creating bridges between people, if we're creating discord, if we're not being peacemakers, what is the point of learning all that we're learning in religion if at the end of the day we're being toxic in people's lives? Science tells us that toxic relationships are very detrimental to our lives. When we're being sarcastic, when we're bullying, we're being toxic. When we're not being peacemakers and bringing people together, we're being toxic. And without noticing, we're creating that toxicity for our very, very health. We have a lot of food for thought today. For now, we're going to stop and open amongst ourselves for more comments and questions. And we invite you to join us in these comments and questions as well. So as we are here, Luciana, Paloma, Carol, and Daisy, we want to talk about how much of what we know already based on science and religion is really opening a new era of regeneration into our lives. Right, Paloma?
Yes, and I think, Vanessa, one area that is expanding quite a bit in medicine, science, and we already know in spiritism, is in the area of health. And because we, you know, We as human beings in planet Earth, we still have all these diseases and things we go through. And when you take the approach, yes, we go to the doctor and we figure out, the real medicine that we know of, the science, and we approach it also with the spiritual treatment. Now we're talking about healing. So that's where it's an area that is ever expanding, but in spiritism, it's a little bit ahead. So it's as like you said, if we read in science these books and brought it to the lab, we would expedite our improvements in health. But we can see it. That's the beauty of it, is that we can see the future, we can imagine how it's going to be and what's coming our way. It's wonderful.
Yes. And Paloma, we want people to think about do this exercise. Can we really see that in our homes? For example, birthday parties. Even we as spiritists, do you pray in your birthday party? Because usually people don't. So, how are we going to progress if we don't pray? I mean, we don't need to make it a prayerful meeting, but do we pray at some point? So, what is this knowledge all about if when we're so splitted that when we celebrate, we don't bring God to the celebration? So, where is God coming first before all things? If when we have a meal, we don't think of God, we don't thank God, and God is always secondary, right? So here is, for example, for example, there was a day in my practice, I was telling somebody who was a religious person, do you pray when you get to work? No. Oh, no, there's no place for me to pray. Well, you can get your phone, sit at your desk, read a message, and in your mind, ask for the blessings. But then if we don't do this, what's the point of going to the center, reading all those books if we're still splitted? So how can we bring a new era in our lives if when we go to a doctor, we don't pray for the doctor? We go through a surgery, we don't pray for the team, we pray for ourselves, but we forget we have to pray for the people who will be practitioners, right? We don't pray for the teachers in our children's schools. We don't pray for our colleagues at work, but we want peace, but we don't pray for them. We're in this mental battle with the boss, the colleagues at work, and the neighbors. We don't pray for the neighbors. How we don't know the neighbors? Well, pray for the neighbors. Pray for the person who does your nails. Do you pray for them? Is it by chance that they are there and you are there with them? No, it's not by chance. So, do we pray for them? And we're saying praying like the first step in so many more steps. So, are we feeling like the unity of all that we know and the material life that we lead? Right, Luciana?
Right. And it's very interesting that you're mentioning that because to us, when we start reading, we really start transforming our lives. And people see different, like we do the prayers. And sometimes people pick on us because we're different. But we are in the right pathway because we know. So we continue on being an example. But as you're talking about bringing into the family, bring wherever you are, my mom is here and she was watching a TV in Brazil. And I was watching and I said, wow, Brazil is still a country that even in the TV they pray to God. So they were saying thanks to God for the achievement that they have. And like here is very rare for us to even be able to talk about God. But they are there in national TV talking about God. And I said, wow, we still have to go forward. But coming back to us, to those books is truly a tool for us to be using daily because it really helps us. And as we pray for anything that we are doing throughout the day, we can see that things resolve smoothly. It's much better when we make this true connection with the good spirit and have those books in hands to help us. It's almost like we have a manual to help us make decisions in life. So maybe we feel familiar with an example from a book, and then you know, oh, if I choose this pathway, this is how I need to proceed. So our those are true guidance in life that is really gonna help us to navigate easily. So if we don't have those tools, we're gonna be walking in the dark. So those books are lights in our life that can guide us and help us to go faster and achieve the object much better in a better situation. So it's a must for us to really study and study and study.
And to be at peace, right,
Need to be
Luciana?
at
Because
peace.
it's like
Yes.
the union of the science and religion is inside of us. There's no place where God is not, where I don't see God. For example, why is my child in this school and not the other? Why am I in this part of the world and not another? Everything has an order, even if we don't understand. Are we seeing it? Are we allowing this unity? Because we want people, oh, we want people to believe. We want people, no, but then we're the ones who need to take that step. So, for example, today our children were practicing a lesson in, I forgot the theme. What was it? Resignation, right?
Resignation, yes,
Yes, right,
resignation.
Daisy and Carol. So they were talking about that resignation and teaching to children the concepts of the moral laws of life is so important because they are taught about the material laws in school. But where do they learn about the moral laws? And that's where we bring it all to the plate here in spirituality, right, Carol?
Right, Vanessa. And to find God in everything and connect to God in everything, because as you've said, there is no place where He is not. Daisy and I told the children that to resign ourselves is to seek the good. God is the author of all good in the universe. So as we find the good, we have a personal encounter with God. So we told the children that to resign ourselves is to seek the good, even when the situation we are facing seems challenging.
Thank you, Carol. Daisy. And they
Yes,
had the heart work, right?
they
Right.
did. Yes. We are using these beautiful materials from Luis Rivas that we invite all the parents who are here to go to our website and look through the material because Luis, who covers exactly like you're saying, Vanessa, all the moral laws, all the moral values that we need to build at home. And this class of resignation is a beautiful story showing how even in the story is this little cat, how even as he goes through a hard situation in his life, he learns how to resign, to accept God's will, and then look for the good in that situation. And as we're talking about the new era in children, as we're seeing here, it's we look at the world, right, and we want the world to be different, to be more peaceful, to be more understanding. But studying the scholars in spiritism in Brazil, they reminded us that the new era starts inside of us. So if we want the world to change, to be different, we are the ones that need to change first. So as you're talking about birthday parties and or as an example, why not we be the courageous one? Because we expect the world to change, but then when it comes to our part, we are like, oh, but what people will think, I'm the weird one, why I'm gonna say anything, or do you know, I was in a work meeting the other day, and someone shared that, one of their loved ones had passed, and I said, I will pray for you and your family, and but people might feel, they might say, oh, I don't know their religion, or but it I will be praying for you and for your loved ones. So uh things like that, and of course putting it in practice, not just saying, but really, why don't we have the courage? And so starting, I think, within us, and then that's how it's going to manifest in the world.
So, Daisy, two things: a story and an article. The story, true account. Brave men. I've seen in the year 2000, 2000, 22 years ago, the current president of the Brazilian Spiritist Federation, Jorge Godinho Neri. He was here in Washington in a diplomatic mission with the Inter-American Organization representing Brazil, and he was promoted, and he had, the highest position in the armed forces in Brazil before the government, and he had a promotion. He had to go back to Brazil, and I remember at a big party for his promotion with all his colleagues at work, all the people from his work. He invited some of us from the Spiritist group to be there. I'll never forget when it was his time to give a speech. He said, I would like to say a prayer. This is someone who really walks the talk, and he is here in the position, really top level. Everybody knew he was a spiritist. Everybody respected him. Everybody was truly reverent, to the point that for us, he was a friend. We would call him by his first name, and his friends who had all these titles, and he did too. He was like, oh, you guys call him by his name? I said, of course, he's our friend. I'm not his work. And for us, he's a friend. And he, in his speech, instead of like pretending, no, he was like, in his heart, he was not splitted. Work and religion, science and religion. He was the same person at work, in the Spiritist Center, in his family, the same person. He was at peace in his heart. That's the goal for us. I saw with my own eyes. He wasn't preaching to anybody, but it was his promotion. He didn't preach to anybody, but he said, I want to thank God. And he said a prayer. And I know many people who know him to date, and he was always coherent. He was never a splitted person. Nobody would doubt his background. And then this brings me the article that is coming up at the Spiritist magazine. And just out of a teaser, the latest issue of the Spiritist magazine was ready today, and we haven't released yet. But for those who are here with us, we're going to show to you firsthand the very issue, because there is a wonderful article that talks about the courage to do what we need to do. And I'm going to show it to you in this very article we're releasing this weekend. And here we are. This is the latest issue of the Spiritist magazine. There's this article, Fear, the Invisible Adversary. And when you go to the very issue of the magazine, Let me just get the page here for you. Fear. It's page 18. So here in this very article, our dear Humberto de Campos through Chico Xavier talks about, I'm not going to spoil it, just out of a teaser for you. He talks about a passage with Jesus when the disciples came back and said, oh, I didn't help that person because what if people said this? What if people thought this? What if they did that? And Jesus comes and says, you know why you didn't succeed? Go read the article, you see the answer. So we end up with a teaser for more because we need to read more to really boost in us. We're releasing the magazine, hopefully, this weekend because it's ready to go. And you can read at spiritistmagazine.org or in our app, anywhere. And with that, boost our lives to a new level. So thanking everybody here who helped us. We want to invite you all to the Pastor's Prayer that our dear Luciana is going to lead for us.
So let us close our eyes and feeling the presence and the warmth of the loving care of the doctors and nurses and our Master Jesus that were here with us throughout this meeting, helping each and every one of us that is willing to receive the help that He has to offer. Visualizing Master Jesus and His team surrender us with their hands on top of us and rays of light illuminating us, healing our spiritual body, our perispirit, and the physical body as we allowed the treatment to permeate our whole being. We feel lighter and in peace with ourselves and with this flow of love energy. We feel so much love, and as we continue to feeling, we now see that this light is so immense and envelop our home, our loved ones, our neighborhood. And as we expand with this light, we can see the whole planet Earth be enveloped in this healing love energy. And as we vibrate in the same vibration of the universe, of our Creator, we now continue receiving the benefits, the healing energies, and the love. And we pray now for our community online and the ones that come physically to the center. Everyone receiving the help that is needed in this reincarnation. We pray also for those brothers and sisters of ours that are starving, thirsty for this nourishment of their soul. We pray so that they can receive some of this love that we have. And we ask, dear Father, that we can be the ones that can co create with you to spread your good news, and so that everyone can partake of this nourishment, of these teachings. We pray for everyone in the position of power, especially the ones that can decide for our planet, for our country. We pray so that they can be guided by the illuminated spirits so that they can help this planet to change to this new era full of love and full of God desires to us. We pray, dear Father, for all of those brothers and sisters of ours that are in need of your help, that feel abandoned on the streets or in their homes. We pray so that they can receive help through us or to those that are around and can help. We pray, Father, for everyone that is desperate and don't know what to do. The ones in jail, the one in the hospitals, or the ones next door that are in need but cannot ask for help. May we send vibration of love to everyone. And dear God, as we are here in this moment, learning and praying to everyone, we wanted to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity of having Kardec Radio in order for us to nourish our soul, learn and share with everyone. We are very thankful for this opportunity of learning and co-creating with you, and for the opportunity to help not only ourselves but those in need. We are very thankful for this community, thankful for our life in this reincarnation. And dear God, with your permission, as we feel so much love, so much of the good that were created for us, we would like to ask for the permission to close these moments of prayer and learning moments with the good spirits. And so be it.
Thank you, friends, for being here with us for this learning experience together. So let us do this exercise. Dream of the new era, the unity inside of us, of the things that are happening, and the hypothesis of a new world inside of us, and then manifesting everywhere we are. We wish you a lovely night, evening, or day, wherever you are. And if you have any question or comment, feel free to write to us at cardiacradio@gmail.com. Thank you, friends.
Thank you for tuning in to Cardac Radio, where we are always nourishing our souls.